Your joy is your authenticity, right? You can't fake it. Who you are, you will feel through where it is that you experience joy. The story that I told about kind of finding a card in a difficult time and it giving me an anchor, just a point of connection. Joy is more in the small moments, observations. It's in gratitude. You can be in a dark time, in a dark place, in a bad day, but you're still able to recognize, look for, or seek those important little interactions, practices, habits, whatever it may be, that just keeps that little spark lit. One of the things I really enjoy about this practice is the opportunity to pause, connect, and reflect. One thing that I'm also a massive cheerleader for is other people embracing their gifts. When you share your own experience, it cultivates trust with people, but you have to know who you are and be able to own that, to do that, and to do that authentically. And I think that's a big part of the challenge for anybody in entrepreneurship today.
Welcome to Leading with Joy, where every conversation is a step towards a brighter, joy-filled tomorrow. I'm thrilled to introduce Hannah Joy Graves, known to many as Cold Mother, a guiding light whose tarot readings offer more than just insight. They provide connection to our innermost selves, a chance to reflect deeply and to find clarity as we navigate the year ahead. Hannah, welcome to Leading with Joy, and thank you for joining us at this momentous juncture as we invite our listeners to pause, connect, and reflect with us.
Oh, I should have trademarked that. Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Should we tell the listeners and viewers what happened yesterday?
Oh, the time where it just wasn't meant to be.
The time when it was not meant to be.
And the acceptance that was needed for us to realign in order to get it where it needed to be. Yeah.
I'm glad we're doing this today. I'm really, yeah. I was just, my vibes were off as well.
Yeah. When, I have a rule, Marty, if the vibes are off, then I don't. People who work with me regularly will know that I reschedule a lot of my classes. I might even reschedule appointments, because if I can't bring like the best energy to what it is I want to achieve, then I'm never going to do it at 60-70%. And I think you and I are probably quite similar in that regard. So
I just don't get out of bed. My mantra is the energy I bring to the room is the energy I create, and that stays in the room as well.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I think I had a period of time kind of working in production. I've lived a lot of different lives and done a lot of different things. But one of the great producers that I worked with was like, look, all of the energy on the set from everyone who is involved will be felt in what it is that we're trying to create. And that's something that you always need to keep in mind when you're working on a set. And so, yeah, you're completely right. If you're not in the right mindset, if you're not in the right energy, it's not just you that it can impact and affect at the end of the day as well.
Yeah. And before we go into this topic, and I'd love to dig deeper here, why don't we just align on what joy is to you? The reason why I ask this question first is to allow the listeners and viewers to connect with your definition of joy, because to me, joy may mean one thing, and to you, joy may mean something else or something slightly different. So what is joy to you?
Well, first and foremost, it is my middle name.
Amazing. You stole my line, by the way. I was going to say, Hannah embodies joy in the name. That was my second thing to do.
Hannah Joy Graves.
I thought you were for a long time. I'm sure. I'm sure you're sensing what I'm going to ask you next.
I actually never used to like my middle name. I went through a process of really embracing and using my middle name. I really didn't like it. It didn't fit with the like gloomy, doomy cool I was trying to cultivate. And I was like, joy. Never used to like people knowing my middle name. And now I really do embrace it as part of the kind of continual practice of not only trying to find it or embrace it, but kind of, like you said, figuring out what that is and what that means to you. And I think the main thing for me is that when I was younger, probably in my 20s, it's very easy to confuse like euphoria and excitement with joy. I was somebody who really enjoyed a lot of very big emotions, everything on extremes. And so we were always kind of chasing that joy, chasing that high, chasing those euphoric moments where you're absolutely lit up about being alive. But I think for me today, joy is more in the small moments, observations. It's in gratitude. It's in, you can be in a dark time, in a dark place, in a bad day, but you're still able to recognize, look for, or seek those important little interactions, practices, habits, whatever it may be, that just keeps that little spark lit, keeps the little ember going. For me, that's kind of joy today.
So it's more about the everyday joys I'm hearing, right? Not just the one big aspirational joy you wanna get to, but it's the creation and the nurturing of the little everyday joys, even even in the midst of little catastrophes we experience in life, like yesterday.
Yeah, and I also think one of the things I when I work with people and kind of convey to people, I always try and speak from a place of my own experience. And I remember the first time I heard someone sort of say, well, look, happiness isn't a state of being. It's an emotion, right? Where people are like, oh, I just want to be happy. And you're like, well, no one can attain. And I think joy is the same. I'm not sure it's something that can be attained at a certain level and kept day in, day out. That part of the kind of full spectrum of emotion and the full spectrum of our experience kind of asks, I mean, it's classic. There's no light without shadow, right? I can't experience moments of joy or intense feelings of joy if I'm not also prepared to sit on the opposite end of the spectrum, which for me, again, is really important. Because if I, especially, the more we grow up and the more real day-to-day responsibilities that we have, the more I'm like, today will be nothing but joy.
Yeah.
I can set myself up to fail. I can set myself up to disappointment. But if it's that, like, where can I find these moments? Where can I experience it? Where can I cultivate it inwardly? So it's there for me to preserve and protect despite any of the barriers or blocks or obstacles I encounter. That I think is a constant pursuit and practice for me.
And beautifully said. And that moment for me manifested in the mystical forest of Sintra, where we met. Even how we met was just enchanting. I couldn't wait to have the tarot reading with you, and I'm truly honored that I managed. I think I was the very last person you offered.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was a really intense event for me. Obviously, to travel somewhere, as like you said, to be in Sintra, to be in the grounds of Arthur Conan Doyle's old house, talking about tarot, offering tarot readings. It was great. But obviously, yeah, as you experience, tarot is one of those things, as soon as people experience that little moment of willingness and they want a reading or they see other people getting readings, everybody wants a reading. I always tell people when they book me for events, they're like, oh, well, I'm like, look, I'm telling you now. When we talk about time and, environment, once one person has sat down at the table, every single person there is going to want to take their opportunity to have their cards read, which I think is part of the magic of tarot and the way that it does naturally cultivate and create these connections that then continue to ripple throughout my experience, which is part of why I love it so much.
And how has it been for you in a world that feels quite disconnected? I like to say we live in the world of the impossibles, right? The 1% margins that were not supposed to happen, right? That's today's world. How has tarot become a bridge for you to experience and share joy? And maybe you can give our listeners and viewers a bit of a story, share a bit of a story on how you've come to experience tarot for the first time and then embrace it.
I hope everyone's sitting comfortably because it is quite a long story, but I'll go for the high points. I am happy to share the fact that I am a recovering drug addict alcoholic. when I say that, extremes of emotion and euphoria and kind of chasing experience was a very big part of my 20s, it's because I was also messing about with a lot of different ways of altering my consciousness. Let's put it that way.
No, that's inspiration. That is absolutely inspiration that you're able to be here to tell the story and inspire others. Well done.
Yeah, it's a long road. And I think, the most important thing is I'll have been sober for 7 years, a month today, actually, on the 6th of January, it'll be 7 years.
Whoa.
And then it is.
Can I give you
Yeah,
there you go.
It is, it is important to celebrate these milestones. But what I always say is, I didn't do it by myself. It's taken a lot of support. It's not like something that I don't continually have to kind of be aware of and work with. But the connection, obviously, to Taro and my Taro practice is huge. Like I entered kind of recovery with the awareness that I was going to need some kind of spiritual awareness or spiritual practice. And I had a real problem with dogmatic religion. The idea of a dogmatic God, that was not going to work for me. I could pray to like Nick Cave or Patti Smith.
Mm-hmm. Did you?
But I was not religious in the slightest.
Did you complete the 12-step program? Just out of curiosity, or did you complete the 12-step program?
I did. Yeah.
And how did you? Yeah. What was your reflection on the higher power in the?
Well, that's what's interesting, So if in 12-step they're like, okay, well, part of what we want you to do here is hand your will and your life over to God as you understand God. You're going to have to ask questions of yourself as to what God really means. And as I say to people when I'm reading cards for them or talking about this concept of higher power, we're talking highest self, the part of you that loves you and wants what's best for you. You can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it nature. Is it inward? Is it outward? Is it both? But my advice is always, we'll call it something and try and get comfortable with it, because it is an important part of the holistic whole of who we are. I think everyone would relate to the fact that, yes, we are a head and a mind, and we are our heart and our emotions, and we have this physical body, but there's also our personality, our pizzazz, our spirit, that little unique something in each of us that influences the way that we experience the world around us, our relationships. And I think for me, when we talk spirituality, that is where I really connect. That's what it is that I'm trying to talk to you about.
What was the first time you came across Taro? What was that first reading like for you?
Okay, so I was a mess. I was living in Berlin. I've been partying very hard for a long time. I'd experienced quite a lot of bereavement in my life, and I really knew I needed to clean up my act, but I was really struggling. And one morning in early January, I went down by the Landwehr Canal in Berlin, and with it being Berlin, someone had taken an old Christmas tree and tied it to the railings on the side of the canal and made like an art project out of it. So they'd covered it in luggage tags and attached it to an old telephone. And on the telephone, it said, call the universe. And then each of the tags said something like, go to the gym or phone your mom. And so I looked at the phone and I looked at the tree and I looked at the phone and I looked at the tree and I turned over a tag and it said, get sober.
Wow.
And at the exact same time, my dog at the time was snuffling around in the dirt, and I was always having to make sure he wasn't eating bits of old kebab he'd found a tarot card.
Wow.
And I barely knew what it was. I was like, I think this is one of those tarot card things.
Do you remember what card it was?
Yeah, I have it. I have it in a frame in my office. It was the Hierophant. Excellent. The keeper of sacred knowledge. Yeah. And what I'd been really wrestling with this morning was the idea that where it was that I was kind of fitting in what it is that I was doing was not really working for me anymore, but I didn't know what the alternative really was or what that would look like. And I had a lot of kind of resistance to kind of 12-step recovery as well. But I looked up the meaning of the card. I just Googled it and it was like, hey, sometimes we really have to ask questions about where we fit in and why. And sometimes if you feel like your true self isn't able to feel seen or to express itself, you need to be prepared to look for something different. And I was like, whew, wow. Like it was kind of the experience of like just finding the card and looking at the meaning was the first time I experienced that real magic in tarot for me of being able to get out of yourself, being able to view or see something from a slightly alternative or different perspective.
I don't know how is it for our listeners and viewers, but I'm a bit emotional because you just reminded me of the first time I came to connect with myself. And it was in Madeira. I searched, well, I'd like to say I attracted, a place that I needed, right? The same way you attracted that card. That was that one transformational gift from the universe to you. And I remember my experience finding Madeira. I went on BA's, British Airways map of locations, and I just wanted to get away. I wanted to leave it all behind. This was back in 2020, 2015, 2016. And at the beginning of my spiritual transformation as well. And I found this place. I was kind of, first I zoomed out and I zoomed in the middle of nowhere. Madeira, I couldn't even pronounce it. I booked myself a ticket for like the same week. I got off the plane and I felt alive. I felt hopeful. I felt I'm starting to see and connect myself to the beauty of the soul that manifested itself in this body, in this creation. I feel the same when you were when you were sharing your story. Wow.
It's always just being, I think for me, that tarot is that practice of not knowing. And I spent a lot of time not knowing how to manage the not knowing, being very, very anxious when faced with any kind of uncertainty. And tarot has become like a bit of a map or a toolkit for really exploring the potential and the positivity that you can find in the not knowing or the unknown. But yeah, that was not the last card that I found in the wild that year either. There was some really strange kind of serendipitous connections, which is what made me get my first deck, started to shuffle, pull one card a day, and then now here we are.
Here we are. Can you
I
pull
did
a card?
that thing. I'll be honest. I did that thing where I might have girl bossed a little bit too hard.
Speaking of decks, speaking of cards, may I ask you to pull a card?
Oh my God, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few out of the deck here. Let's pop them back in because I'm teaching a class tonight. Let's have a little look. Let's go. Okay, so giving these cards a good shuffle. Do you have a particular kind of curiosity, query, or question in mind, or are you just kind of wide open right now in terms of...
Wide open, and I'd like it to be for the leading with joy.
Okay.
The listeners and viewers and anyone practicing.
Okay, amazing. As you kind of eloquently introduced today, one of the things I really enjoy about this practice is the opportunity to pause, connect, and reflect. So let's just pull a card and see how and where it might be relevant. Okay, so the card that I've pulled, the 10 of Wands. Now, 10 of Wands is an interesting card because being a 10, there is actually quite a lot of experience for us here. And this figure is very capable. They can handle a lot. They can take on a lot. You can see in the imagery here, the figure is holding these 10 sticks. They've got their head down. They're really keen to kind of move and drive things forward. So we love that. But the only issue here is we also want to make sure we can still really see where we're going. So we often talk a lot about the path. Am I on the right path? Am I heading in the right direction? And this figure is just so full of kind of enthusiasm in terms of what they can get a hold of. They're in it and they're doing it, but they can be losing their direction. So it is a card that kind of invites us just to pause, just to reassess where it is that we're headed. This is also a card that will encourage you to think about who it is that you can ask for help from. Where is it that we can find a little bit of support? Why is it that we feel like we have to do everything all by ourselves? Because the energy of the 10 of Wands for me is very kind of like, by the time I have explained to you how to do it, I might as well have done it myself. And we find ourselves in this place of overwhelm and kind of disconnect. So I would say for anyone watching, listening, if you're very close to the finish line, if it's about tying up loose ends or just drawing a line under things and you feel like you're very close, this can be that last push. It can be a really big push of enthusiastic kind of creative energy where we know we can do it, we know we can get it there. However, at the beginning of a new cycle, at the opening of the path, at the beginning of the project, let's not bite off more than we can chew. Let's lighten the load. Let's really take the time to assess where we're at and where we're headed, because otherwise we can get a little bit frazzled and a little bit burnt out here in the energy of the Ten of Wands as well.
I love it, and it's quite timely for the new year. And I love the universal application of tarot. I mean, it can it kind of instigates, it nudges us to reflect on our personal journeys, and the way I love your storytelling. I just love how you bring it to life, and how you allow, for myself, when we had a couple of readings, you allow me to really connect with the message that you are just channeling.
That's such an interesting word. Channeling is such an interesting word for me, because it exists in that sphere of kind of like the 18th, 19th century occultism, and you imagine kind of Victorian living rooms and people kicking the table and things that go bump in the night. But yeah, I think the idea that you have to work tarot, and I do believe that everybody can read tarot. Everybody can read tarot and be very good at it. But really, the more connected to who you are as a person, the more you own your own truth and your own story, and the more comfortable you are with speaking from a place of experience, the more that you can really infuse these cards with that element of humanity that is required for other people to relate and to connect. I don't want to log into a meeting with someone or go for a meeting with someone and them talk about tarot and be telling me about the Hebrew letter association and this weird symbol down here. I want to hear about how it is that I use the meaning and make it relevant to my life. How is this going to help me is really the big query question I think most people have in their readings and around the cards. So I've worked, I think, to really figure out how these images, some of which have been around since the 14th century, are still relevant for who we are and the way that we have to live our lives today, especially with the amount of noise and distraction that we all have to deal with as well.
And I love I like to explore a bit. I love what you said, and I'd like to explore the theme of starting your own venture with tarot. I mean, this show is for entrepreneurs. It's a practical application, right? It's what do I do with joy? It's nice to feel joyous. It's nice to attain joy, but you know what? I'm not going to go and sit on top of a mountain and meditate. I want to be able to share that experience with others and inspire others. In the process. So. You started you have your own workshops, you have your own venture, you are opening a studio in Belfast, if I remember correctly. Tell us a bit more.
Okay, so firstly, with this joy, entrepreneurship kind of connection for me, your joy is your authenticity, right? You can't fake it. Who you are, you will feel through where it is that you experience joy. We talk about kind of passion, enthusiasm, engagement, joy. Yeah. Oh, it's just been a wild ride. So really the story that I told about kind of finding a card in a difficult time and it giving me an anchor, just a point of connection, something I could relate to, being very powerful is really the experience behind everything that I do today and have done. So I picked up a deck. I'd start pulling cards. After about a year, I was reading cards for friends, and I very, very quickly started wanting to read cards for other people to try and provide them with the same experience that I had or be of service in some way, really. And then obviously we got hit by a pandemic. We were in lockdown. Everyone was online learning how to get into Zoom, and people's worldview had shifted. People were dealing with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of confusion, and feeling a bit lost in how to navigate that. So I started to get really busy and I've stayed really busy. I read cards. I teach classes to encourage other people to connect with this practice and to use it in ways that can support them. But one thing that I'm also a massive, massive cheerleader for is other people embracing their gifts, whether it's card reading, astrology, Reiki, somatic body work, these more alternative, for want of a better word, or original tools and techniques. If they want to, they can get a hold of them and use them and also create a life that is fulfilling and also find stability and security. Because I think under capitalism, we're told that if you choose work that creates joy for you, that you are authentically aligned with, that there will be some sort of sacrifice necessary. And that sacrifice is that you won't have any material security or stability. And I just think it's fundamentally untrue. So a lot of work that I do with kind of coaching other people, other practitioners, my witch biz shiz, as I call it, is to try and like look at people's mindset and the blocks and the barriers that they have in terms of really embracing who they are, what they can do, and finding ways to make that work in this system that we have to live in.
You are creating value in their lives, and you're attracting, the right outcomes for yourself as a result, which is great.
I mean, it's tricky, right? Because I think it's really important to think about, like a niche, what it's like to be in your niche and to understand what you do, to do it well, to understand the kind of people that come to you, how it is you connect with them in order to find more people that will want to interact with you. And I think, I can approach things from a very marketing sales, how to sell things and sell yourself kind of way. But I also, when we talk about this idea of joy, I think that if you're someone and you do what you do and you do it authentically and you do it well, people just naturally gravitate towards you. People these days are very used to being sold to. They understand the patter. They understand what it's like for you to set something up and offer something to them because you want them to buy it. What people are looking for is you as a person. They want to experience your personality. If someone's going to come to me for a tarot reading and share their, deepest, darkest secrets or whatever it is that they may be upset about, they need to know that I'm someone who's safe, someone who is willing to also, like I said, when you share your own experience, it cultivates trust with people. But you have to know who you are and be able to own that, to do that, and to do that authentically. And I think that's a big part of the challenge for anybody in entrepreneurship today.
And building on this thought, if you were to meet the cold mother at 19, yourself today, right now, you're sitting across. Think of this is you, right, across this across the camera at 19, but with the wisdom that you possess now, right? So the teenager yourself, young adult, but with the wisdom that you've come to acquire over the years. What would you say? What would you say to her?
I think, my first reaction to that is I try to grab her by both shoulders and shake her. I try to instill in her the awareness required to avoid a lot of what was experienced. But actually, I think the number one thing I would want to do is just hug her. I would hug her and I would tell her that I love her and I know that she's doing her best, and that actually in the next 10 years, all the ups and all the downs and the mistakes, I'm older than 29, but let me have it. It's the wisdom I have today is thanks to all of the mistakes that idiot made. So
beautiful.
I wouldn't change any of it, but I would want to tell her that I love her, because I think for me, I spent such a long time with no self-esteem, just an absolute deficit of any kind of self-esteem or self-love. And I went looking for validation and peace and love in all the wrong places and in all the wrong people. And it was an incredibly steep learning curve. And to be frank, I'm quite lucky that I survived it. I know people who didn't. And that is a tragic truth, I think, when we get older. We look around and realize that there's people who just haven't made it. So, I'd hug her, but I'd tell her to keep going and to make sure she didn't give up, because one day we'd get to a place where it would all start to make sense.
Beautiful reflection, beautiful advice. Thank you for being the source of ongoing inspiration to me, and I'm sure now to the lives of many others. And thank you for giving us all hope, as we said, the intentions for whatever number of months, weeks, or even days, or even hours. Let's live in the moment.
I love a new year. I think it really is genuinely a blank page, a fresh start. We have the ability to push the reset button and bring a kind of refreshed, rejuvenated perspective or approach, no matter how dark or difficult it may seem. We really, really do. I'm really excited to see what lies ahead.